We'll get started. Okay, awesome. So week 2, Rachel Hollis, last 90 days challenge. I know a lot of people caught the replay for last week, so we are recording it. We would love for you, if you're watching the replay, we'd love for you to be on live with us. It's so much fun to get to talk and get to know each other, but also understand that it may not be the best time. We're committed to this time for October. But if anybody has any suggestions on a better time or anything like that, please just DM me. My name is Kelly Hoover. I do a lot of posting in the group, but you guys can just message me if you have some other ideas or anything at all. This is really just a place for us to come together and help hold each other accountable and support each other for our goals for the last 90 days. And each week, what our plan is so far is really just to talk about the email and sort of what Rachel has talked about this week. So did everybody get the email and get a chance to watch it about habits? Okay. If you didn't, I'm doing my best to post it inside the group with like the YouTube video and all of that. So if you go into the Rachel Hollis hype group, under units, you'll see like last 90 days, and then it says week 2. So there's like a cool little, hopefully you guys got it. There's a cool little like tracker worksheet that came along with it today about habits. So I'm just going to open it up. And if anybody wants to like kick off the conversation about, maybe let's talk about the YouTube video that was, I know it was filmed during the Rise conference that they did, because I was watching that conference, but does anybody want to just like open the conversation up and let's talk a little bit about, her whole cycle of cue, action, reward when creating habits?
Too, I just wanted to say that, I liked that she did it, but I was kind of disappointed that she just reposted something from the live event.
Yeah, I know. I guess because they already had it, and who knows what is happening, amongst her life. Yeah. So.
But I mean, I did love it. I mean, it's a great way of looking at something. And one thing, how it can be so negative and positive, and it all starts with one action.
Yeah.
I think we just need to remember to give her a little bit of grace for the things that she's going through and her family. So we just have to remember her in prayer and give her a little bit of grace. And we're just very, very fortunate to be able to go through this and have the things that we do that she's already written out in the past years. And this is such great formats that she's already provided us. Great handouts.
I didn't mean to think it. I didn't mean it in a negative way. I just was looking forward to something new. So I was just kind of like, oh.
Hey, Kelly, I'd like to introduce myself. I'm Sina Martin. I live pretty close to Nashville. But I'm really new to your group. Just wanted to, and I hate it. I have got to run out and pick up dinner.
Yeah, but no worries.
How often do you do this? Is it going to be recorded?
Yeah. Oh, you're so sweet. And welcome to the group. It's not my group. It's all of our groups. I just, post a lot in there and try to offer encouragement. So this is really only our second time as a community coming together. We did a book club earlier, right when COVID and like quarantine happened and Dave launched his new book. We did that. And then this is really only the second time that we've done a community sort of accountability. So this is only our second Zoom. So you haven't really missed a lot. So I'm going to record them all and upload them to YouTube so people can obviously watch them on the replay. But we would love for people to be on live, even if it's just a small group. I think it helps us all. But welcome to the community where it's a lot of fun.
I wish I could get to know each and every one of you better. I love 90 days. I think there's just so many significance to the 90 days. I have so much I could sit and just chat but I love encouragement. I love encouraging others, and God knows I need it. But I'm going to look forward to seeing y'all in the group, and can maybe give y'all some Tennessee tea time and kind of let you know what all's happening in the South. I'm sure my accent is like totally Southern. But anyway,
It's okay. I'm in South Carolina, so.
Oh, okay, good.
Yeah.
Y'all are all beautiful, and but I didn't want to let the day go by and not jump on, because I really get a lot out of the group.
Oh, good.
And I want to continue to do that. So
Good.
maybe
I'm so glad.
And maybe I've met some good friends. So peace out, and I will see y'all really soon.
Okay. Thanks for hopping on. Welcome to the community.
Bye.
Yeah. Awesome. So thanks, ladies, for those of you just joining on. Welcome. We're talking a little bit about what this week's lesson in really accountability is. It's all about habits, and really just talking about the very first section of the worksheet, which is, what are habits and sort of the habit line. And if you watched Rachel's video, she really talks about like cue, action, reward, but then she talks about like the negative habits that we have that most of us don't even realize we have. And so part of this week challenging us to understand why we have these negative habits, and it's really like a trigger, an action, and an aftermath. And so one of the things I personally, I'll just open up, like maybe we can discuss this. One of the things that I found to be so interesting, and actually after I watched it today, I made a social media post about the negative self-talk and limiting beliefs that I'm not saying that men don't have them too, but I do believe that women, we really, like, if we think about what goes on inside our head, and she said, are you ashamed of how you talk to yourself? And it got me thinking, like, if your neighbor, if your spouse, if your significant other, if your kids, like I have 2 daughters, if my daughters heard some of the things that go on in my head about to myself, like I would never want them to have that. And so it really started like making me think about that negative self-talk, and, trying to figure out what are those triggers. Is it something I see online? Is it something that, you get on a scale? Is it something that like you eat a cookie and you're like, oh, like, I don't know what that is, but it just really made me self-reflect a lot about the trigger. It's really the limiting belief, and it equals a negative habit, and we all have them. But just really trying to figure out, I'm going to work on this week, trying to figure out what are my triggers for those habits. So I don't know if anybody else took that away, but that was sort of like my biggest, like, this is what I'm working on this week from her video. So anybody else can share.
Well, I'll say a few things just about, just like negative self-talk, but I also was like thinking about all of the strange things that happen in our thinking habits while I was running this morning, just about things that I talk about with patients all the time, like shooting all over ourselves, talking about like things in a catastrophizing kind of way. So all of these like things that go through my head with certain situations. And I think right now more than ever, the world feels so polarized that I find that my thoughts almost feel like they're competing with one another. And I almost feel some level of guilt for not being able to pick a side in my thinking habits. So the struggle for me is just like old familiar things that I would just reach for, that I felt like I solidified and worked through and sort of developed new habits around, have now sort of, I feel like maybe backslid a little bit just in terms of the way I think about it. So behaviorally, I feel like I'm still functioning in line with like my value system, which is good. Like it's values consistent, which is what you want, because that's usually where wellness is. But I find that like the thinking portion is a little bit skewed at times. So whether it's negative or negative self-talk, but for myself, I find like my thoughts feel very polarized, very black and white, sort of needing to choose, make a lot of choices. I don't know if it's the political climate. I don't know if like it's what's going on in the world. I don't know if it's my day job. It's probably a combination of all of that. I also have 2 kids, under 5. So I feel like a lot of that is probably playing a role too. But the polarization of that while trying to maintain like behavioral functioning that feels like it's in line. I mean, people who are in recovery talk about it all the time, like this idea of faking it till you make it. That's like an old AA expression. But I really like it because sometimes I'm like, okay, so even if I think this way, or maybe my emotions aren't in check, I'm going to still go for my run. I'm going to still do my 30-day burpee challenge with my neighbor. I'm still going to, even though I don't like it, my heart doesn't feel in it, my head doesn't feel in the right place, I'm going to at least put my behaviors there. So this week, I think my commitment is really just to make sure that like thoughts or feelings also get back and lined back up with like the behavioral functioning. So I'm running and I'm doing all the things, which is great, but it's not connecting with me emotionally. And so that's the piece that I want. I want it to feel good. I want to reap the emotional benefit of the hard work, which I feel distracted from that for some reason. I don't know if other people are feeling that way.
That's really insightful. Have you ever, do you do affirmations, Sarah?
I do on occasion. Mm-hmm.
On occasion. So I don't know if this will help, but I will tell you sometimes when I definitely feel that way on occasion,
Mm-hmm.
especially when I almost feel like there's so many things swirling around and it's hard to just like stop them and like decide, how I think about things. And it's always when I'm exercising, because I do think we think a lot of things when we're exercising. It's like our head is cleared or it comes back very confused. And so I got in the habit probably about a year and a half ago of repeating my affirmations constantly when I'm exercising. And so sometimes if I ever have like those sort of thoughts, I'll just like immediately trigger myself to create the habit of, I am happy and grateful for like whatever my affirmations are at that moment. And I don't know if that will help, but sometimes that seems to like really get me like back, at least in that flipped side of the mindset.
Sure.
So I don't know, maybe you could try that.
Yeah, that's a great idea. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Well, you'll have to let us know next week how it goes. Does anybody else want to share?
I'll share a little bit.
Awesome, Jessica.
So I have been working through for, I guess, probably like 6 years, because it's an ongoing process, right? All the negative self-talk. And something that really helps me, and I can't remember where I read it or heard it or whatever, but somewhere I heard, and it might have been like Gabby Bernstein or somebody like that, who you. It's not what your thoughts are. It's something you heard somewhere, either verbally or with someone's actions, someone in your past. And I've kind of experienced both at a very young age. My dad was verbally abusive. Well, that's what really started making me work on this inner self-talk, because I realized it was his words, not mine. But then even after I removed myself from that, I was in a neighborhood with people's actions said I wasn't living up to their standards, which honestly was okay for me because I purposely designed my life the way I designed it. And that's, I was in a neighborhood that with people with very large houses, right? But they also had large mortgages. And I have a small house and no mortgage. I purposely did that. But the negative self-talk comes in where it's like, oh, you're not, can you hear me okay? There's a lot of wind. Okay. That negative self-talk comes up, like, not good enough. So something that really just helped me is like, what was that?
You were just echoing for a minute, but I think it may have stopped. Is she frozen?
Okay, I can't.
Okay, now we
guys
can hear
me?
you again.
Okay, good.
I got you.
Okay,
Yeah, go
good.
ahead.
It
Keep
got
going.
really, really windy. I'm outside. So anyway, what I was saying was it helps me to go back when I have negative self-talk to say, where did I hear that before? Why is that not true? And what is actually true? And that helps me like rework what I actually know is true. And that's what I find myself doing all the time when I'm like, oh, well, I don't have the house so-and-so has. It's like, well, that doesn't mean I'm not better off or they're better off. It doesn't mean not at all, you know, because my circumstances are just different and I purposely want to mortgage. So, you know, and I just kind of rework it to like, this is how I wanted my life, you know, and I don't know, it just kind of helps like bring you back to real, and it just helps you realize, I guess, what's really true, because all that self-talk just isn't, none of it's true. I don't, you know, it's just something, a seed that somebody planted in our head at some point.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah. Amy, what I'm thinking of right now is there is a, you know, there's like a simple thing we talk about, like as therapists, that we give to people about their thought checking, which is catch it, check it, change it.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, just like it, and essentially like the way you're describing it makes me think about that very like process where you're mindful of what you're thinking, you're catching yourself like in a thought that feels unhelpful, and then you're deciding like to do something with it, which I feel like puts you in the driver's seat way more than just sort of letting it wave over you and feel like the thought is like more powerful than what it actually is. So
yeah,
I think what you're saying makes perfect sense.
Yeah, and I think becoming aware of it's the hardest part. Because I think ideas pop in our head all day long, and sometimes we're not even aware of it. So becoming aware of it is, honestly, it's mind blowing when you start working through it.
Yeah.
Or some of the thoughts, where those thoughts are actually coming from.
Yeah, or to feel some kind of way about the actual thoughts that you're having, and even acknowledging that, right? Especially if it's like not like super nice, or it's like an affirming way you kind of decided you feel about somebody or some type of thing, that can be really hard.
Yeah. So anyway, those are my thoughts.
Awesome. Thank you, Amy.
You're welcome.
I know I listened to of you guys, it was actually on Dave Hollis's podcast last week, or maybe it was the week before. It was the one where he had Jay Shetty on. I don't know if you guys heard that. But he was talking about the thoughts. I'm hoping this is the right podcast. I listen to so many. But he was talking about 50,000 thoughts that we have in our head, and 80% of them, which is 40,000 a day, are generally negative for the average person. And then if you struggle with like already negative self-talk, it could be more, you know, and just like, it's mind blowing that, you know, as people, we have that many thoughts in general, but that a lot of them are not positive. So.
Oh, wow, you guys, it's snowing.
Where are you, Amy?
Oh, freaking snowing. Oh, I'm in Wyoming.
Okay.
It's snowing. Okay, I just got really distracted by the snow.
That's awesome. What did anybody else
Wyoming?
Amy?
What?
You're in Cheyenne?
Yeah. The cool thing about Wyoming is that you can see the snow up ahead, but when it comes down, it's like melted. So it's like, it looks like rain, but when I looked up, it was like, holy crap. Anyway, sorry.
That's cool.
I think I'm going to take you all inside. So never mind me while I move you around my house.
I do a thing with my son and students that I work with where they'll come in and, you know, my son will say, oh, I'm so bad at math, or, you know, whatever. And I'll say, okay, well, say something that's true. And so I say that a lot with kids. Tell me something that's true. And they'll say, okay, well, I don't understand how to do multiplication or whatever it is. So a few months ago, I'm walking around my house. I'm all angry. I'm like, nothing works here, blah, blah, blah. And my son said, Mom, nothing works here, say something that's true. And I was like, oh, okay. Well, the dishwasher's broken. He's like, that's not everything. And like realizing those thoughts, you're just making these crazy assumptions. To realize that and then to say something that's true brings it down about 1,000 levels. And then you can say, okay, well, nothing works is very different than my dishwasher is broken,
Yeah.
I don't know. And also, Amy, back to how you were saying, I don't have a house as big as so-and-so. Well, so-and-so doesn't have a house like the other so-and-so. We're all wanting, that's how we are. We all want, it's never enough. My son and I were at a model home and we were walking through and I was like, oh, could you imagine? And we were going, and I said, but just so you know, if we got this home, it wouldn't be enough. I would want more, it's never, we always want more. So to be able to be grateful for what we have and to be able to know. So I really love that you were able to say, well, I don't have a mortgage and I don't have, to know those good things. That's so good.
So true.
Yeah.
Self-awareness, right?
Yeah. Well, and I think too, like willingness, if you have willingness to hold like all the bad stuff, then you should have willingness to hold the alternative to it too. It feels only fair to do that, right? With our thinking and our feeling.
Yeah, absolutely. So if anybody else wants to share, if not, we can like go to this next section of the little workbook, and it's really breaks it down, which I haven't completed them all because I'm going to have to really think about it, I think, as far as like the habit stacking and the habit plan, and on the next page, habit pair and habit track. I love the examples though that she gives. I definitely have a big habit stacker fan. Like I love doing that. I view things sometimes, I don't know. I have a little bit of a different idea too of the habit stacking, just as far as like putting two habits together, one that you don't really like and one that you do like, and doing them at the same time. So like for people who don't necessarily like to exercise, you get to watch a TV show while you're exercising, or something that you really love, tacking it with something that you don't. So that's always been a little like trick that I have always sort of told myself, to really get those things done that I know I need to do, but I don't really want to do them. So does anybody have like any ideas or anything that we as a community can help support you in this week when it comes to this lesson as far as habits go, or any thoughts? And don't feel obligated to share. You don't have to talk or share, but we also want this to be a place that you can, if you want to. Okay. Okay, so why don't we do this? Why don't we, spend this week, maybe we could all hold each other accountable and post something in the group. It doesn't have to be, specific to, exactly what you want to do, but let's just post in the group so we can hold each other accountable about our habits. Maybe it's something that you said, hey, one of the habit stacks or habit plan or something that you figured out on the worksheet, or maybe it's like Sarah and I, where you're really like looking to, create that negative, like take that negative habit and just be more self-aware and figure out triggers or anything. Maybe in the group, we'll just think about, I don't know if you guys are calendar people, but put on your calendar, hold yourself accountable. That's part of what we want to do for each other, is hold ourselves accountable and just post sometime in the group about what you're doing good, like what you have done well this week about habits, about, a trigger for a negative self-habit, or maybe just some self-reflection that you realize, hey, I go and grab, this bowl of, out of the Halloween candy, and my trigger is, maybe that's something that you figure out about yourself. And I think that would be a really good way for us to be able to just support each other during the week. And maybe we'll look at the ladies' names on here, and when you see them make that post, let's just offer them some encouragement to get through it. Because it does take, you guys, first off, it takes courage to show up to something that you're being held accountable for, right? Like you showed up because you want it for you, right? Like you want to be held accountable and you want to support other people in their accountability. So you have to give yourself a pat on the back for that. And don't think about what you haven't done right, but think about all the things that you are doing right, and really focus on, okay, I'm going to really focus on this one habit, or figuring out what my triggers are this week, and really, highlight yourself in that and give yourself a kudos. A lot of times we don't. We're like, a lot of us are, you're humble in the fact that you don't want to give yourself a pat on the back. But some things like this, habits, no one knows unless you share it. Because they're so internal. So what do you think? Does that sound good to everybody? Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely need to figure out what my triggers are, because I do really well normally, right? But because I've been working on this process for a while, but there are definitely some days where I'm triggered by something, and I go grab a bunch of bad foods. There are days where I do it very purposely and intentionally, and that's okay. But then there's like days where I'll just go grab an entire bag of chocolate chips and I eat them. And it's like, what caused me to do that? I don't know. So that's something I definitely need to get aware of. Like, what is causing me to do that?
Yeah. I feel like for me, trying to figure out the why feels too insurmountable. So I try to figure out, I don't know if it was in a podcast or something I read this week, but somebody was asking the question related to the topic of habits about figure out what your status quo is. So if figuring out your why feels too hard, the alternative, like they suggest, was figure out what your status quo is. And I started thinking about that, in my household or in my job, or my responsibilities as a mother. And sort of status quo is I'm going to get the laundry done. I'm going to know the 95 things that my kids need, even though my husband tries really hard, but he's not going to, put the hat on the kid when it's 40 degrees and be like, oh, she's fine. I don't, so the status quo is, I think, helpful, because that baseline functioning, I think it helps me just realize not all of it is bad. And a lot of it too, I think into, and I'm glad that I'm in those roles, because it feels good to me to be in those places, because those are the places I want to be. But I'm I try to figure out the status quo though for my diet, or my running goals, or and in COVID, I mean, I feel I feel like the world is completely upside down, and every day it's changing. And I'm in New York, but I'm from Northeast Ohio, so my family is in Ohio, and they are having a different experience of COVID than we are on the East Coast, because I know New York, New Jersey has made the national news with our hot seat bed of COVID spreading here. So maybe that's part of it, right? The intensity of it just feels like it's right here. But I also am a therapist, so I feel too, because of what I'm doing every day. So the status quo for me, I'm my barometer is so different than other people. So that was helpful for me to come across that, because I'm okay, maybe for me, the question isn't figure out why. Maybe for me is figure out what this baseline or my barometer is, and then see how can I shift it just a tiny bit. I think Rachel calls them mile markers a lot in a lot of her things. And I that's probably the equivalent of what's going through my head about that. But the why for me, Amy, it feels like too much. And when things feel too much for me, I get avoidant of spending too much time in that space, and move on to something that feels more productive.
Yeah. I think I just want to be a little bit more watchful of when it happens.
Yeah.
it usually happens for me around 3. And I have a feeling it has something to do with bringing my child home from school.
Probably.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because that
For
all
sure.
can be very stressful.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But I need to like really, I think, just be aware of what's going on. Because there are some days where it's perfectly fine.
Yeah.
I'll grab a healthy snack. It's perfectly fine. But it was just last week, and I don't know why, but I grabbed an entire bag of chocolate chips and ate most of them.
Yeah.
My 9-year-old then came and took the rest. It's the only reason I didn't finish it off.
So I wonder if it would be helpful then for you on the day that it's easy or going well, like maybe that's actually the day you need to like take a pause and be like, so what about this is working?
Yeah.
Rather than always stopping yourself when it's the
True.
bad day, trying to figure it out.
Yeah, very true.
That's a great idea. I love that, Sarah.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, you guys, thanks for joining tonight. I know we said we were going to try to keep them like to 30 minutes or so. So again, if you guys have any suggestions or anything that we can help support you or for the community or anything like that, please reach out to me on Facebook. I'm open to anything that you think will be helpful. And I will upload it to YouTube and post the recording inside the group, hopefully later tonight. But let's knock out some habits. Let's get self-aware, hold each other accountable. Don't forget your 5 to Thrive things that you're doing. And also, one of the other things, if you feel like you need some additional support and accountability, you can always go to Rachel Hollis's YouTube videos. I think you can go back and you can trace, so many of them back and listen to them. And I think that that's always like, a really good, she was obviously in a different place, I think, than even where she is now. But I think everything that she puts out in the past has been really, really wonderful. Or even if you've already read some of her books, not the new one, but like Girl Stop Apologizing and those things, like rereading them. Or, if you ever need book suggestions, I have tons of suggestions and I'm sure the community would too. So you can always just ask in there. So Atomic Habits. Yes. I have that on my to-do list. Sarah.
Yeah,
it's a good one.
Mm-hmm.
It's a good one. I'm reading right now. I'm almost finished with it. If you guys have never heard of this book, it's called Inner Size. It's very it's somewhat like a scientific book, but it's like the science of unlocking your brain's power. But it does talk a lot about like subconscious and conscious brain. So it's a little too much for me personally to like sit down and read. I have to read it like chapter by chapter because it's like a highlight book. But it's good. So it was awesome. Thanks you guys for being on, and y'all have a great week. We'll see you next Sunday. Bye guys.
Thank you.